Life in modern society is a competition. And some would say a battlefield. And a common analogy is the rat race, trying to get out of the rat race. I'm going to introduce the barrel. These are the individuals that haven't achieved the status or the power to be able to do what they want to do. Technically, if you want to refer to them as still being in the rat race, these are the people in the barrel. And I'm going to focus this broadcast on the ones at the bottom of the barrel. If you're aware of crabs in a barrel, that analogy, I'm going to use that analogy. And there's also roaches. It's Wednesday, December 22nd. Let's get into it.
Put some respect on my name. You understand me? When y'all saying my name, put some respect on it.
So it is Wednesday, December 22nd. We're going to talk about those at the bottom of the barrel. Now, I will kind of talk about the barrel in general, just because I haven't, talked about this analogy before. But I will talk about those at the bottom of the barrel. Now, the barrel is a struggle. Everybody's born into the world. Some people, they're fortunate. We could refer to them as being born with a silver spoon or golden spoon or whatever. Their parents are already outside the barrel hunting, doing what people with power do. We refer to them as the alphas on the hierarchy chain. I'm going to go into that as well. But this is for the people in the barrel, the people that are upper middle class and lower. They don't necessarily have the power to live as free as they think they do. They still got obligations and bills. They can't move as freely as they would like to move. But, they're not too far away from being to that point where they are in a position of power where they can be referred to as an alpha. Now, this isn't talking about dating stuff. So when I say alpha, I'm talking about a position of power in the hierarchy. I'm not talking about no alpha male, alpha female, that crap. No, I'm talking about actual hierarchy, like that is in a wilderness in general. The ones that have the power. Now, those in the barrel, they I refer to as crabs because they're in the struggle. They're trying to make it out of the barrel to get to a position of power where they do have this freedom, where they can do what they want or desire to do, and easily fulfill whatever legal obligations they do have. And at the very bottom of the barrel, we have roaches. The roaches are those that drag on society. They don't really have much to offer to society, but they do drain from it. They have no problem consuming what they can. They fight for the scraps, and they like it. Or, how can I say it? They're at peace with it. They don't really see. At least the crabs are really struggling to try to get out. And if you're aware of crabs in a barrel, crabs will hold on to other crabs to prevent one another from getting out. And this is very much true in society, but there are some key differences between the crabs themselves and the roaches. There are some key differences here. And I'm gonna briefly go over some of them. So here goes some of the major. Now, mind you, this is not a perfect ideology. Still in the works. I'm just putting it out here to kind of, you know, set the stage. I'm gonna work upon it. There's gonna be some things that might need to be altered here and there, but I just gave a, general understanding of how I see things. And I do like using metaphors and analogies to explain things. So the crabs versus the roaches. Now, mind you, the roaches are at the very bottom of the barrel. They at the bottom. The bottom. I mean, the crabs is over the roaches. The roaches at the bottom, literally. So here's some key differences. Now, the crabs, like I said, they are struggling. They are trying to get out. They are going against other crabs that are trying to hold them down or hold them back, or other crabs that are trying to cling to them while they try to move themselves up. And the smart crabs realize, hey, you can either help me, but you can't be a drag on me. So the smart crabs know to cut off the other crabs that are trying to hold them back. They contribute to society. So these crabs, like, the struggle. Imagine all that struggling that they're doing is like, in a way, it's effort they're putting out there. You know, they're contributing some way to society. Um, in this analogy, like, I'm not referring to it money or anything like that, but I'm just referring to it as effort. You know, they typically the best reproduce. So they are selective when it comes to mating. There is no like, let's just produce a bunch of bastard babies, that kind of thing. That's the roaches. No, the crabs, they actually do have a hierarchy. Actually, all of them have hierarchies. Those outside the barrels that we refer to as alphas, those that are crabs that are referred to as betas within the whole hierarchy, and then the omegas being the roaches. Each of them actually have their own hierarchy within their within so there are out so within the crabs hierarchy there are alphas and betas, etc. The bigger crabs at the top, the smaller crabs at the bottom, but all of them are betas compared to the alphas, which are those outside of the barrel. Those outside of the barrel can consume them. They eat upon them because the crabs work for them or whatever. The crabs don't have the power to get out. Those outside of the barrel feast upon the crabs for their own benefit. And only the best, typically the alphas, the better crabs, typically reproduce. They will eat scraps, but they want better or they want more. So imagine like you feed fish over the barrel. There are driplets or residual from whatever's left over from the alphas that are outside the barrel. They get first dibs. They're out there hunting. And the crabs and those that are in the barrel, they get the leftovers. They get whatever's left over. They might sprinkle a little bit here and there to set some bait to get some crabs on board with them. That's what the alphas do. Sometimes they use the crabs to work for them. So they might sprinkle a little bait here and there to get the crabs to work for them. But in general, they will they will consume whatever they can because that's what they got. That's what they got to eat. But the crabs want more. They fight within the barrel to get the better of the scraps. But they would prefer. They're still struggling. They're fighting, especially those at the top of the barrel. They're fighting to get out of that barrel to become the alphas so they can get first dibs on whatever so they can hunt. But remind you, like I said, there is a hierarchy. So even when they make it out of the barrel, they're at the bottom of they're typically start at the bottom of the alpha hierarchy. So even when they get to the alpha status, they got to fight within that class. And they're good to eat. Like I said, the alphas, the ones outside the barrels, they do consume the crabs. They use the crabs, for their bidding, however you want to use this analogy or metaphor, create your own metaphor. They use the crabs for their benefit. Those outside the barrel, they're useful. The crabs are actually useful. They give effort. You can actually work them. Now the roaches, on the other hand, um, they don't have that desire to really leave the barrel. They're actually okay where they are. They don't have the roaches. If you were to really talk about the roaches, they have a defeated mindset. They have a defeated mindset. They don't see themselves as winning in life. They don't think they can win in life. So they're okay at the bottom of the barrel getting whatever they can, but they're not looking to go through the struggle like the crabs are to get out the barrel. They're like, I'm at the bottom, feed me my scraps. I put on here they like the bottom. They might like the bottom. They might tell themselves they like the bottom, but in reality, they have a defeated mindset and they don't want to go through the struggle. Therefore, they create in their mind, I'm okay where I'm at. They take from society. Like I said, they eat the scraps and then they don't contribute. So they are consumers by nature. They like to consume stuff. Forgive me, I'm going to start my truck now. So hopefully the sound quality holds up. Here we go. But they like to consume. And they reproduce rapidly without concern. So if it is a mating strategy for some creatures where, because like I said, they do get handouts and scraps. And I'll go into this a little bit more later, which is why it don't make sense and how you can relate it to modern society. There is a mating strategy for those that are in poverty where you do produce as many children as you can because your children aren't guaranteed to survive. So the more children you produce, the more likely they are to survive, and there is a chance that they might, evolve into a crab and make their way out of the barrel, and then these roaches are hoping that they pull them out with them. But remember what I said about the crabs that are going through the struggle, and the smart ones cut off those that are dragging them down. So remember that. They love eating the scraps. So you offer some scraps, they like, come here, give me them scraps. They love handouts. Look, give me them scraps. And they're good for nothing. So, if you want to eat the roaches, fine. I prefer to eat the crabs. That's what I prefer to eat. To be honest, in my opinion, the roaches are good for squashing. Like there's nothing really good that the roaches are good at. And it's better to just for them to just, you know, wither away. Because they might bring, in the real world, roaches typically bring diseases and stuff of that nature. They're not contributing, they're just consuming the scraps or whatever. They just consume whatever they can without producing anything. They're a net negative on society. So they're not typically good for anything. Now let's dive a little bit more into the roaches. Here we go. All right, let's see if my sound is holding up. Okay. All right, so roaches. This is describing the roaches. Like I said, in the overall hierarchy, those outside the barrel, the crabs, the roaches are the omegas. They are at the very bottom. They're at the very bottom. These are the people that are comfortable at the bottom of society. These are people that don't want to try to do better. If I were to give it an income bracket, I'd probably say maybe these are the people that are in poverty, less than like 20,000 a year. That's just a rough estimate. It might be closer to 30, but less than 20,000 a year for sure. These are the roaches. Most likely they don't have a job that really contributes anything to society. They absolutely love consuming. And don't forget their mating strategy. They like to reproduce kids rapidly. That's their mating strategy. They're not strategic with it. The best don't technically get the rights to do it. It's just come one, come all. Let me get it in. And there's a reason for that. Like I said, I'm going to dive into it. Now, the roaches don't really compete with one another. Well, they compete for the scraps that they have. That's why they might shoot and kill each other, whatever. But outside of their hierarchy, outside of the roaches, they don't compete with the crabs. They definitely don't compete with anybody outside of the barrel. They just whatever scraps is at the bottom of the barrel, they fighting each other for them. They don't compete with nobody else. They don't bother overcoming obstacles. So there's obstacles there's obstacles that are going to come about in your life. The roaches don't really care about trying to get over. Most of them are if they can, they're usually on some type of government assistance or something, or they're just hopping from job to job to get whatever scraps they can. And they're not really trying to get over the whatever obstacles might be in their way. In fact, they tend to like to make excuses. They don't bother trying to leave the barrel. So if they're not trying to fight the obstacles. Now, mind you, if one of the roaches makes it out, they will absolutely love for somebody to pull them out, but they themselves, they aren't trying to leave out of their own effort. They're scrounging around there fighting for the scraps at the bottom of the barrel. One of those roaches gets promoted somehow, some way, somehow, and makes it to the top of the barrel or out of the barrel somehow, some way. They will be looking for a lifeline. Hey, throw me that line, help me out. And like I said, imagine a roach out of the barrel. It's only good for squashing. You don't like, some people might consume the roach, but it, in my opinion, they're good for squashing because you're not going to get any real good work out of them because it's a roach. You might be able to devour it, get a little bit of something out of them, but not really much. Not to mention that there is a good chance you might get disease. So that's the risk. Remember, roaches carry diseases. There's a likely chance, even if you do consume the roach, there's a likely chance you're going to get disease. And in this analogy, we're going to assume, that the crabs are typically healthy. So less chance of disease. But the roaches, yeah, you risking it. At best, it's a 50-50 shot. So it's best to just squash the roach. Now, I mentioned the hierarchy. Each one has their own hierarchy, and I'll touch on this with each one. But roaches in the overall hierarchy, they're at the bottom. They're the omega. And it's typically a matriarch. So if you don't know, if there aren't real alpha males, real men that can get stuff done, real men with power, they are below the women. So that's why at the bottom, it's typically a matriarch. Or some similar form where the women dominate, in the Black community, we refer to the sisterhood or the gynocracy, where it's governed by society. In the favor of the women. And I'm going to dive into why that is. And the roaches at the bottom, it is typically harder for the male roaches to get out, to evolve. Because mind you, and I'm going to dive into this later on, you can elevate yourself from a roach. Because where your parents are, you're born at whatever class level that your parents are, but you're not limited to it. Yes, you have to struggle to get out, and yes, you can devolve. Kind of similar to Pokemon, but more like Digimon, where you can actually devolve. You can evolve, but you can also devolve, meaning you might have started in the as a crab, as an alpha crab, with your parents being alpha crabs, and then you suck through life and you fall all the way down you're right above the roaches. That is absolutely possible. You get demoted because you didn't struggle or you didn't do what you need to do to maintain your your alpha status or try to get out of the barrel. So you can't now you might be born to roaches, but you can evolve and get out of the roach status. That's why when I referred earlier, you can get to that roach. You can go from a roach to a crab and then make it to the top of the barrel, and then the other roach is gonna be looking at you, looking for a lifeline to get on up. And remember what I said about smart roaches being willing to cut off those that are dragging them down, because that's more struggle. That's more resistance. So what you're trying, like, imagine you're going up a hill. It's already at a freaking 40-degree angle, but now imagine you're going up that hill with a 100-pound weight on your back. That's more you got to do just to try to get the same. So that's why I said earlier, usually the smart crabs know, let me cut this dead weight off of me and let me keep fighting and get to where I need to go. Now, once you get to where you go, you can tell the other roaches the path you took to get to where you got to. But mind you, like I said, the roaches typically have a defeated mindset, and they're going to look for you to pull them up versus traversing the same pathway you use. So yes, it is harder for the male roaches to make it up over the female roaches, because we know if you're a female roach, if you're reasonable, you can actually you have a slightly higher status than the males anyway, so it's easier for you to evolve over the male roaches. And within this roach class, there is what I refer to as the king roach. The king roach. Did you know female roaches can actually reproduce asexually, meaning they don't need the male roaches for extended periods of time? I say that again. Do you know that female roaches, can asexually reproduce without the male roaches, and they don't need the male roaches for extended periods of time to reproduce, that is? Think about the current baby mama drama situations, women willing to become single mothers over wives. Relate that to that. But yes, they can go without the males when it comes to reproducing. Not thriving or whatnot, but when it comes to reproducing, they can go without the males to reproduce all their little bastard kids. Now, it's typically a gynocracy or matriarchy, whichever one fits it best, because the females are at the higher status because they're at the bottom. And the majority are female. The males already lack power, as well as the females lacking power, but the females typically have a slightly higher value. As you know, women have a higher value early in age because they don't have to produce like men do to earn their value. Women typically have a higher level of status. Now, in society, it's usually the mindset that keeps them as a roach. A lady can be born a roach, and then remember what I said about the defeated mindset? She doesn't have that defeated mindset. She doesn't incorporate hood rat culture into her lifestyle. She doesn't go get tatted up. She doesn't go sleep around with a bunch of dudes. She doesn't become a baby mama. So that right there, by the time she reaches like 20, 22, if she's avoided all that, she's already elevated herself somewhere within the crab hierarchy. Already. Already. Didn't have to get a job or nothing. Like, if she avoided all that buffoonery, by the time she reached 2022, when she's at her peak, and then mind you, depending on how good looking she is and how what her demeanor is, she could be at the top of the barrel, where one of the alphas is looking like, hey, that crab looking juicy. I might take that. The male crabs can't do that. You don't. Yeah, you got to work. And mind you, remember what I said. The male roaches. I'm sorry, you got to work. So mind you, what I said. The male roaches, they have a defeated mindset, meaning they're not going to put forth the same amount of effort or same amount of effort as the crabs do. They're at the bottom of the barrel. They eat and they scraps, and for whatever reason, the female roaches are still willing to reproduce with them. Ain't that a bitch? They're still able to reproduce with the female roaches at the bottom. Ain't that a bitch? Oh, and that king is that king roach is technically a queen roach because actually they're dominated by the females. Typically at the bottom, they're dominated by the females because the men have no power. They lack power in society, by default. It's a de facto matriarchy. They give more power to the women, especially when they have kids. They give more power and resources to the women over the males that haven't produced. Now let's go on to the crabs. But before I go on to the crabs, I might want to take a brief break. I'll start. Let me start the crabs. All right, here go the crabs. Now, mind you, there is another hierarchy here. Remember, there's always going to each bracket has its own hierarchy within itself. So there are bigger alpha crabs. Then there's the beta crabs. I go over this later on, but I'll show you the different styles and the different levels in the hierarchy. And then once you get to that bottom, it's just like when you're playing a game or something, once you get to that bottom, like you lose a Mario life, you of course in the game of Mario, once you lose a life, you lose the mushroom and then you die. But in this case, you get that defeated mindset, you go down to a roach, and then now you got to work your way out of the squalor with the other roaches. You're completely powerless. You might have got some sort of defeated mindset about you, and then now you got to work your way out. So let me do this real quick. Take a quick break. Okay. Let's see. Get back here. Testing, testing. All right, I'm back. Now, the crabs, they are willing to work. They're all working to get out. They're all pulling, tugging on each other. Some in most cases becoming each other's obstacles. Some crabs get comfortable where they're at and stay within the barrel at a certain level. They get better scraps than the other crabs. They definitely get better scraps than the roaches. They're able to survive, but much better than the roaches. But they are in a constant, struggle. They're actually able and willing to put in effort. And they get rewarded for their effort, as does everybody else. They must overcome obstacles to get out of the barrel to evolve into an alpha or a predator. The predators are the alphas. They go out and hunt for anything and everything. JB, he refers to them as producers. They can be held in the barrel by others and obstacles until willing to break through them. Now, this is key because we already know the analogy with crabs in the barrel, where in the barrel it's typically the other crabs that keep the crabs at the top in the barrel. But the smart crabs, the strong crabs, they have to work their way up to the top, and as we refer to them as the alphas, of course. Of course, they get the better scraps left over by the predators at the top that are out of the barrel. But at the same time, if they're smart, they know to break away from the other crabs to get out the barrel. And some crabs actually might work together. So now this is another case where smart crabs, they work together to push one another out of the barrel, and then they pull their friends along with them. They develop. I look into. I might do something on the PayPal mafia with Elon Musk and his guys, where they literally dominate in the industries. Coming from one company, all these guys go out to found YouTube, which is of course the platform you're watching on now, as well as like Palantir and Tesla and all these other SpaceX and all these other they are dominating, and they all come from one company because now, mind you, they weren't crabs. They were all already kind of, well, they might have been alpha crabs, and then some of them, and then others were already kind of like within the hierarchy of the predators. But now they're like, if they aren't at the tippy top of the predator list, they're damn near right there at it. So actually, Elon, he might be a peak, at the peak. He might be an alpha predator. It depends on who you ask. But they are definitely dominating for sure. Let's see. Now I talked about obstacles. And what are the barrel obstacles? Now there are the crabs that hold on to the other crabs. They hold on to the other crabs, they keep each other down. But what are the obstacles outside of the other crabs holding each other down? So imagine inside that barrel, there's fish nets, there's fishing line, there's random weights, all this crap, poisoned food and scraps, all this stuff that can cause sickness, illness, that can entangle them, that can hold them down and hold them back. And all this can come in the form of a variety of things. Excessive taxes. They don't know how to properly structure their taxes, so a lot of their income is literally being drained from them. Prejudice, racism, poverty. That's one of the biggest ones. Random events. That usually tends to be what knocks off quite a few people. Like we just had a pandemic. That a lot of people lost their jobs. Some people actually use this as an opportunity to switch careers to potentially elevate themselves. Those are the smart people. They realized their jobs weren't really doing what they're, weren't taking them anywhere. And this was like a awakening where they realized, hey, I need to do better. So it's not always bad that comes from bad. It can actually be a good thing. And then one of the biggest things that I believe, at least for the male crabs and female crabs, is trap babies. This can be a real big holdup. Because now, imagine you're in the struggle, trying to make it out. You have a baby for whatever reason, and you're now entangled with someone else permanently. And you now have to support this kid, which is now imagine a dead weight, because the kid can't provide for themselves. You now have to provide for yourself and the kid. And then also you're still You're also tied to this other crab, the one that you decided to have the kid with. This goes for both male and female. It's usually males because men typically make more than women, and women typically get with men that make more than them. So usually the female crabs are below the male crabs they would like to provide produce with, because as I said earlier, they do mate within a certain hierarchy. The female crabs prefer the winners, the crabs that are that are closer to the top, unlike the roaches. But it can be a hindrance because now there is a kid they have to support, which is a metaphorical dead weight that's tied to both of them. That is another obstacle potentially holding them down. Additionally, there are no king crabs. This might change as I better understand it, but right now, it's not like the hierarchy at the bottom where it's rolled by technically queen roaches. In the crab hierarchy, they all fighting to get out the barrel. None of them really have power until they get out that barrel. So no one really dominant, like no one. I mean, if they want to try to, sorry for that. If they want to try to claim they're the king crab. I mean, king of the barrel. I mean, they're all fighting and climbing over one another. There's no definitive king of the crabs. Technically, the system won't allow it. They pay the most taxes. That's where the middle class is. They're getting drained. Most of them have jobs or self-employed, getting taxed out of the wazoo. And like I said, they don't have the power like those out the barrel. And they're willing to put in effort to try to get out of the barrel, unlike the roaches. I already talked about how they can be alphas. Now let's touch on some of the key points of the roaches. Now remember how I did a crossover talking about how I'm always kind of uncomfortable where I'm at, so I'm always moving forward, how I'm always pushing myself to do better and be better. Well, roaches, mind you, they have that defeated mindset. This is also similar to the crabs that are just above the roaches, because mind you, they're not too far away from it. They're close, but they're not too far away from it. And to some extent, they get comfortable with certain things. Like I said, they do eat the scraps here and there, crabs and roaches. Roaches love it. Now the crabs they would like better, so that's why they're fighting to try, at least trying to get better. But they'll take the scraps. They're eating the scraps here and there. They're comfortable with handouts. Food is food to them. They got to get it how they live. They're in the barrel. They got to take what's there, what's available to them. Now the roaches are just happy to get whatever they can get. The crabs are like, I want to fight to try to get better. They're comfortable with making excuses. Now, typically the crabs that are closer to the top, typically they make fewer, if not any, excuses. Once they elevate, get out of the barrel, they have power, the excuses go out the window because they're pretty much they're in a position of power now. There's no reason for it. There's no reason to make excuses for anything unless it's strategic. Art of War, Sun Tzu, you can read that. There's some strategies where it looks like you're making excuses when really you're doing something else. So, you can read that book to kind of catch up on some game. But no, those in the barrel, the farther to the bottom of the barrel, the more excuses you'll see that they're comfortable making. Especially the roaches. The roaches at the bottom, they love excuses. Excuses, if it was like a second food, it would be a second food for them. because they already have a defeated mindset. They already know they're not going to make an effort. A lot of them will actually lie. They will actually. Matter of fact. Story time. So there's an individual that I know of, young man. He unfortunately was born a roach. He had the potential to make it, to elevate, evolve from the roach, and make it to the crab status. He would have had to start from the bottom, but he had the potential to actually make it to the crab status and fight his way best he could to get the best scraps he could, right? And I remember specifically, this is some years ago. Now, mind you, he already did the cardinal sin. He already produced a bastard child. Cardinal sin. He already shot him. Roaches have what, like 6 legs. He pretty much chopped off one of his legs already. All right, he wasn't helping himself, but he still had the opportunity to elevate to at least the crab status, to get better scraps, right? Even though he's gonna be a bottom crab, he still had the chance to elevate to the crab status. I remember specifically having this conversation with this dude. Right, driving in the car, we drove past. I live in Charlotte, uh, so we got some 5-star, 4-star hotels. We drove past one of the 4-star hotels, right? Now I don't think he actually made it all the way through. I think he was getting his GED or something. He didn't make it all the way through high school, so he wasn't. You know, he was capable, but on paper he wasn't bright, right? And I remember I was talking with him. Me, uh, man, I call Kevin. Rest in peace. He passed away, but he was a very significant father figure to me. Throughout high school and college. Personally, he did pass away. Sir OG from the north. So me and Kevin were in a car riding with him, and I kid you not, he was talking about, oh yeah, he had put in a job application. He had got a new job. He had to start. He had to start um, the next day or something. It was at that one hotel we were driving past, and me and Kevin were asking him questions like, "Oh, really? Like, yeah, yeah, yeah." He's like, "Yeah, they told me I gotta just start there, and once I start there, everything good. I'm doing good and all this stuff." So he was telling us he was doing good because we knew, he was in a bit of trouble. He was a roach. We were afraid that he'd do what most roaches do, which is get too comfortable at the bottom and just not make any effort to get out. So he had showed us some kind of promise. But me being me, with the social skills I had been knowing this dude for maybe 4 or 5, I think about 3, 4 years, because we went to the same high school. And I know when he was lying. Now, mind you, he told me all the crap about, now this isn't to be insensitive. He told me all the stuff about his father and his mother in that situation. And like most roaches, it was not pretty. Some roaches eat their own kids. It was not pretty. I grant you that. But he had people whom were willing to try to elevate him to crab status. He had people that were actually telling him some pathway to how to elevate from roach to crab. And it was on him to do the work, to traverse the path, to get from roach to crab. He had told us all this stuff about this job interview he went on at that hotel, and how he's going to start there with this, and he was going to get paid this. Then he'd do this to take care of the child that he had created, the bastard child I talked about earlier. And when he was telling me, I was like, "Oh, that sounds decent. That sounds okay. That sounds, you gotta start somewhere, right? And then my spidey senses kicked in, and then I noticed some of the of his quirks. Like he wouldn't look you in the like he when I look him in his eye, he'd look away, look down, or there's certain telltale signs when you know somebody's lying. And I picked up on some of his telltale signs. I was like, I think this Negro lying to me. So come to find out, when he was supposed to start, this dude just disappeared. Straight up disappeared. He went off the grid, was nowhere to be found. I'm pretty sure he never went on no job interview. There was never a job. He fabricated all of it just to try to look good. And that was something he would do from time to time. He just fabricate crap, talking about how good might be turning out, how good things might go, and yeah. Nah, this dude straight up lied. Ran into him some months or years later. He didn't have nothing to say to me. Still a roach. I don't know how he getting by. Probably on them scraps. Like I said, he eating them scraps. Still a roach. Think he made maybe another bastard. Still a roach. Absolutely lied. Now he'll all willy nilly. He'll make all kinds of excuses. All kind of excuses. But when push came to shove, when there was an opportunity, when he had people trying to tell him, hey, take this path to elevate their craft status, he ain't do nothing. So they're absolutely comfortable in making excuses. And in addition to that, they're okay with crime. Some of them do some explicit activities on the side, both male and female. They out here, they can claim they making money, but they can't show you no W-2, because the money they claim and they make don't come from no W-2 job income. It come from bags of suspicious narcotics and whatnot that may or may not land you in jail, that may have you doing some hard time if you get caught possessing it. Because they're roaches. They don't have a code of conduct other than the street. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're familiar when people say I'm about that life. That's a roach moniker. I'm about that life. Let me tell you right now, I am not about that life. Absolutely not. Because what people don't realize is, when you take up that lifestyle, when you're comfortable with crime, when you let the streets know that you're for the streets, I'm about that life. There is a contract that you sign that essentially says you're free game to the streets. You can get robbed, you can get jacked, you can get, popped, deleted, for whatever you got, because you enter that lifestyle. I know this because I was around these dudes. And I was like, nah, bro, I ain't about that life. And they left me alone. They left me alone. Sometimes, actually, if there was a situation where where some dudes are coming up on me, they'd be like, nah, bro, he ain't about that life. Like, let him be. Now I might have been fortunate. I mean, it helps that I wasn't small. It helps with that. But let's just be real. Like, usually from usually from what I've seen and from what I've been told, if you do anything at least illicit, you so much as have a bag that you sling on the corner, you have just signed an invisible contract, and you let everybody know you about that life. Now you're free game. So now all the roaches gonna be, because roaches will eat each other. They are cannibals. Now you just let all them other roaches know you free game. All them scraps you got, it's free game. They are free to kick in your dough and do what they got to do to take your scraps. And some people can act like they don't know, but they know. That's what it is. Another part of the roaches, they're comfortable with failure. Absolutely comfortable with failure. They sit down there, and run around in filth. Forgive the sound. Forgive the sound. They sit down there, run around in that filth, eating the scraps that they find, eating the scraps that they get given. However, they do. Just excuses. I said, keep that away from me. I am not about that life. I let them know. I let them know I didn't smoke a joint, didn't do none of that, didn't sling nothing. Thanks to my stepdad as well. He said, my stepdad, shout out to my stepfather. No guns, no drugs, no girls. He just eliminated some of the biggest hurdles in my life. No bastard kids, no STDs, none of that about that life crap. No pum-puming, slinging lead at each other. None of that. Shout out to my stepfather. Failure is not an option. And when I say failure, I mean a defeated mindset. Being comfortable with failure is not an option. That's better. That's how I should say it. Being comfortable with failure is not an option because you're going to fail with some things. But being comfortable with failure overall, throughout the entirety of your life, being comfortable with it, having that defeated mindset, not an option. I cannot be a roach. I cannot be a roach. I will be that, at worst, I will be that crab just above the roaches stomping on them. I cannot be a roach. Absolutely. Absolutely not. I am not about that life. I'm not. I was raised around it, in it. Shout out to my stepfather. He kept it away from us best he could. I am not about that life. Comfortable with filth. Yeah, I talked about how they get around. Now, this is mainly the roaches. And sometimes the crabs that are fighting just to stay above the roaches, but might not necessarily be doing enough to actually move up. Like that, they'll do enough fighting to stay above the roaches because they think it makes them better than the roaches, and then they try to lay down with the roaches, if you know what I mean. So they think, like, hey, I'm the king of the sand lot or the parking lot. Those kind of dudes, they actually do a little bit of fighting to at least be a little bit better than the roaches, but they still really roaches. They just fighting a little better to get better scraps, but they comfortable where they're at. They're comfortable in the filth. Now, let me touch on the evolving. Like I said, you can move up and down the hierarchy. You might have been born to roaches and started as a roach. You just got to do a little more work than the others to eventually elevate yourself if you want to become a predator. Or if you want to become an alpha crab, you're at the top of the barrel. I mean, some people are comfortable staying there. You know, they might not necessarily want to take on the risk of starting their own business and stuff like that, getting out here hunting their own food. They're okay getting that nice hot paying job. They like sitting right there as an alpha crab. Of course, they're not taking the risk of not eating because they have to hunt their own food, which is what the predators do. And mind you, there will be an income cap. So if you can sit up here and say I'm a predator and I got my own business, you only netting 50 to 80K. Nah, you're not a predator. You're still you don't got no real power. Predators got power, not just income power. They get stuff done. They eat you. Those are the predators. The predators are the ones that contract people to do their bidding. And that contract is the scraps they give you. That's why you can be an alpha crab. You might have a business or something like that, but you're not on Elon Musk level. You're not on that level. You're not a predator like that, where he's actually building spaceships and crap. He's able to influence governments. You not on that level. You're not a predator. So let's get that straight. I'm not a predator. I'm actually like more so like a beta crab. I'm right below the alpha crabs. Somewhere in the middle of the beta crabs. That's where I'm at. I'm looking to elevate next year. Let's go to the hierarchy. Now this is the overall hierarchy. So I kind of show you how there are alpha and beta crabs within their hierarchy within the barrel, but the overall hierarchy, the crabs are the betas, and the roaches are the omegas. When you make it out of the barrel, when you got power, that's when you start to become an alpha. But even then, you still start at the bottom of the alphas. If you think about it, think of like you watch One Punch Man and they got the Hero Association. There's like the A class, S class heroes, A class, the D, whatever it starts at. You're at the bottom of that list. You're at the bottom of that hero list. In this case, it might be like the A class. You're like A300. Then you got to make it to A1. Then you elevate to like S20 or whatever. Then you got to work your way up the S list if you're trying to become the alpha of the alphas. Now the alphas, JB refers to these guys as the producers. They carve their own way. They got influence. They got power, real power. They're able to influence communities and then therefore governments. They're able to get stuff done. They're able to. I want to build I want to build a building on this block. I can get it done. That's what alphas do. They don't have a business that's online that makes a bunch of money, but they ain't really building or doing nothing. They just selling knickknacks and stuff online, making a lot of money. That's not an alpha. If you got to be able to build and do stuff, that's what alphas do. They got actual real power. Because you can have money, but you don't. If you don't know how to use that money, what I mean, you're not gonna be able to do nothing. You're not gonna get anything done. Alphas hunt for their food. They ain't looking for scraps. They mush you in the face and say, "Get out of my way. It's my prey. It's my lunch. I ain't eating nobody's scraps." Now, it's a hard time. It's a hard life as an alpha, because, as you know, it's a constant battle for food. Resources are limited, and sometimes alphas get demoted or perish. Because food's not guaranteed as an alpha. You got to get out here and carve it out. It's not guaranteed. You have to know how to maneuver. You got to be able to effectively hunt for yourself. Now, as a crab in the barrel, you can take it, usually that's where most people just hold a job. The alphas employ them to get them food. The alphas feed upon them. But the alpha has to be able to get them on board to get a consistent flow of resources or food. And then on top of that, the alpha is trying to get higher in his hierarchy. So he has to go out there and hunt and find new ways of getting food. They do not like scraps. They do not. They like to earn their kill. If you ever seen a wild animal, if you want to see like the life being taken out of a wild animal without killing them, put them in a zoo. Put them in a zoo and then give them food. Give them handouts, scraps. It will absolutely destroy them. Their life, the wilderness was a part of them. The thrill of the hunt. That's why you can't take a captive animal, a captive lion from the zoo. You can't put it out in the wilderness. It'll die. It's been used to getting handouts, being turned into a crab or a roach. A lion in the wilderness is a predator. They thrive upon the thrill of the hunt. They prefer it. So where would you like to put yourself on this list? Mind you, we're born where we're born. You could have been born to alphas. You could have been born to roaches. But mind you, the higher up you are, the more people are pulling on you from the bottom. Like if you're born an alpha, you got that silver spoon. Yeah, your parents might have a considerable amount of crabs working for them, which might help you out. But you best believe there's other alphas looking to take your spot. Shoot, there might even be other alphas looking to take you. Sometimes the alpha is like a running back in the football league. It's high impact, high intensity for about 5 years, and then it's out. Then they're out. They're out of the race. Now they're content with what they were able to get, or they got defeated. One or the other. But I do plan on refining this, I guess, throughout over time. But this is just like a general, like how I kind of see society when it comes to production value. Shout out to Jason Black, where he talks about producers. And this is just kind of like my analogy as to like how I break it down for people. Because I know sometimes, if you're able to effectively break it down for people, with, common sense terms and stuff they can understand, then they start to understand better. Most of the time, at least if they got some level of some level of intelligence. But let me know what you think. You agree? Disagree? Is there something I can improve upon it? If so, let me know down below in the comment section. This has been pre-recorded. This will go live, I believe, Thursday, December 23rd. I'm recording it on the 22nd at night, but this is the crossover. So we go from night to morning. Last chance for your priority chat if you want to get it in there. So to conclude, as Jordan B. Peterson said in 12 rules of life, antidote to chaos. Life is suffering. You are expected to suffer as you resist, as you strive to do better. It's a struggle. That's what life is. It's a constant struggle for survival. Are you going to sit around and make excuses? Because you can make excuses if you want. Yes, some people struggle less than others to get to where they are. That ain't going to help you if you're born a roach. That ain't going to help you if you're born a crab. What you can do, however, is understand, how did that predator or alpha crab get to where they are? What path did they take? What obstacles did they avoid? How can I get to where they got to? That's what you can do. Instead of sitting around talking about all the obstacles holding you down. How are you going to get out of it? The world is indifferent. It does not care about you. Not until you're a predator, at least. So that's why I think everybody should strive to be an alpha crab or at least a predator. That's what you should be fighting for. We all might not make it there. There's limited resources. There are unforeseen obstacles. But sometimes it's about the journey as well. And you can talk about how you fought to get to where you are. Even if you don't make it, you take that knowledge, you pass it on to your offspring, you give them the roadmap, what obstacles to avoid, how to get to where you got to, and then they can do better because now they got a roadmap as to what to do and or what not to do. So till next time.